this time around having some issues with my internet. I need to get this shit sorted out, man. I need to get my internet fixed, because it is messing me around something crazy right now, this internet. It's doing my head in, because I recently moved, and since recently moving, the internet here has been horrible. So I need to change provider or do something, but obviously these things are not always straightforward. So 1 second there, people. Let me just check and see if I am sounding a little more fluid here rather than cutting up constantly. Make sure everything is as it should be. 1 second, people. I'll be with you in just 1 sec. Okay, right. Let me view this on the watch page here on my laptop, and then I'll see what is going on. No sound. Oh my god. On the watch page here on my laptop, and then I'll see what is going on. No sound. Oh my god. Alright, Kieran Malcolm, not sure why you're not getting sound. I'm personally getting sound myself, so. Alright, Kieran Malcolm, not sure. Alright, cool. Let's get into this now. Second attempt. Right. Okay, big up Clinton Payne, Nick Hassan, Connor Boyd, Charlie, Boxing Barry, Michael, Clinton Payne, Jason Brown, Mario, big up. Chronozy, Charlie, big up. Megzy, Dean Morgan, Payam, Archimedes, Archimedes says, can't believe I've been following this channel for like 9 years. Do you remember channels like Naptown, Born, and Men Take Bubble Baths, Jose Silva? Yes, I remember all of them. Not so much Naptown Born. I remember Naptown Born, but I didn't watch as many of his videos as I did the other two. But I do remember Naptown Born. I think he was a cool guy from what I remember. Ariad says, I'm sure I'm butchering your name, bro. But Ariad says, Hatman, you seen Chris Eubank Jr. carrying on with the delusional comments. Yeah, I just actually made a couple videos about that, which I'm going to upload shortly, about Eubank Jr.'s comments lately. Adam Penny, big up. Ishmael, big up. Shaka G, big up. Shaka G says, should Andre Ward come back for Bellew or Bivol? I mean, I can't really tell a man what you should do. Would I like to see him come back? To be honest with you, no. I think that he's left a legacy and he solidified himself as a Hall of Famer. Coming back, I think, can only tarnish his legacy, really, because the light heavyweight division is tougher now than it was when he left it. Because when he left it, there was only Stevenson and Kovalev. Now you got Stevenson, Kovalev, Beterbiev, Vodcek, Bivol, and all these guys. So I think personally he should just chill and leave the division to the younger generation. That's what I think. But hey, you know, it's up to him what he wants to do. Nick Gabb says, Crawford versus Spence, who wins? A lot of people have asked me this question. I think that I need to see Crawford fight at 147 first before I can start making a prediction about who wins out of Crawford and Spence. Need to see him up at the higher weight division and see how he looks. Michael Achor says, do you think AJ is right for not facing off Wilder after the fight without a contract being signed? Clarify your question, please, Michael. I'm not sure what you're asking there. AJ is right not facing off Wilder after the fight without a contract being signed. Do you mean after his Joseph Parker fight that he's refusing to face off? He's refusing to allow Wilder in the ring. Is that what you mean? Because I've heard about that. Connor Boyd says, Hatman, what are your thoughts on Canelo? I mean, my thoughts on Canelo are, it's hard to believe that with all the cases of so-called contaminated beef going on in Mexico with many fighters getting caught, how could it be that somebody as high profile as Canelo with a big team around him are allowing him to eat Mexican beef? That's what I think about Canelo. You know, maybe they are not allowing him to eat Mexican beef. Just speculation. Thomas Bradder says, Hatman, who do you think has the most entertaining or interesting press conferences / interviews? I always like David Haye interviews, actually, because he always says something ridiculous. I like the Eubank interviews. I like Tyson Fury interviews. I like Jerome Miller interviews. I like Dylan White interviews. There's a lot of guys who I like watching their interviews. Charlie says, what's your take on the UK-Russia situation? I'm not going to touch on politics here. I talk about all that stuff on Patreon, but here I'm not going to touch any kind of politics or anything like that, because that's a quick way to get your channel demonetized or even shut down. So I ain't going to even attempt to talk about nothing slightly controversial when it comes to geopolitics on this channel right here. Headley says, need to see Crawford against Horn. Exactly, we need to see him against Horn first and then see. Pashtun says, Patreon subscriber here, loving your thoughts and insight into various topics that you cover. Very interesting and educational, and thank you for being on board, bro. I'm actually working on, because a lot of people were very positive in terms of their feedback about my witchcraft podcast. You know, I did a podcast about witchcraft on Patreon, and what I'm doing now is I'm reaching out to a lot of the African people that I know, and I'm going to try and interview all of them if I can, the ones who have stories about witchcraft in Africa. And you know, one of them in particular went through a near-death experience, yeah, where they nearly died and nearly had to have their leg amputated because of some witchcraft. So yeah, I'm working on that. I'm going to put it together maybe in 2 different podcasts. It will just be me interviewing people about all that stuff. Anyway, let's get back to these questions here. Christian Denton, big up. Big up Archimedes every time. Clinton Payne says, Wingy Boxing is now working for IFL doing interviews. Would you do the same, or have you been offered to do something similar? I've been made offers by certain channels in the past, but I wouldn't do the same, you know, because I've got no interest in working for anybody. I've been self-employed, you know, forget about YouTube. I've been self-employed since when, 2010, 2011. I've been self-employed since then, and ever since I became self-employed, I always said I would never work for anybody again, ever. I don't like being beholden to people. So, you know, from when I became self-employed, everything I do, whether it's YouTube or whatever I do, it's going to be me working for myself. It's not going to be working for nobody else. That's just me personally. You know, I've obviously worked for people prior to being self-employed, but I wouldn't do it again. You know, I'm just not cut out to be an employee. I prefer being my own boss. So, but you know, much respect to Wingy, and I'm sure he's going to do very, very well in IFL. So, Mark Chapman says, Hatman, who wins, White versus Brown? I have a feeling Big Daddy is going to be harder than White realizes. Depends what White is expecting. I think Lucas Brown is going to try and box Dylan White for the first few rounds. I think he's kind of giving his game plan away a little bit. He's going to try and box him and try and frustrate him and get Dillian Whyte to overcommit, and then he's going to come in with the big punches and hope to knock Dillian Whyte out. Nizzy Kid says Joshua might as well come out and say he don't want the Wilder fight yet. You know, I'm not convinced that Joshua don't want the Wilder fight. I just think from a business perspective, the two camps are not really seeing eye to eye at the moment. Headley says, I watched Parker against Takam and noticed he got hit with a lot of clean power shots. Is it me, or does he have poor defense and will get lit up too easily with power shots by Joshua? I think his defense is not great, Parker, but he appeared to be a bit more elusive when he fought Kajanu. I know Kajanu was not as good as Takam, but Kajanu was a big tall guy. Excuse the siren. Kajanu was a big tall guy, so you know, against a big tall guy, when the punches are coming down at you rather than up at you, he might be a little bit better defensively. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm definitely picking Anthony Joshua to win the fight. I'm not going to put my house on it. You know, an upset wouldn't shock me. But in my head, I think it's 60-40 in Joshua's favor. So I'm definitely picking Joshua. I'm not hesitating or anything like that. I'm definitely picking Joshua to win. But I'm expecting a competitive fight. Alright, David says, what are your top 3 dream fights with the current crop of boxers? Top 3 dream fights. Joshua versus Wilder. Spence versus Furman. And Kovalev versus Beterbiev. Same Hussein said, that witchcraft vid freaked me out, Hatman, no more. Fat Gamer Dad says, yes, Saturday morning boxing chat. What do you think of Frank Buglioni and Yard? Am I missing something? Because it seems very overhyped. Prospect versus British Gatekeeper. I mean, it's good that we have these kind of things going on at a low level in British boxing. This is why Britain is in a much better place. This is why British boxing is in a much better condition right now than American boxing. Because in British boxing, we've got grassroots support. Yeah? People will turn out and support domestic level fighters in the UK. And they're very passionate. Do you understand? This is why boxing in the UK is thriving and booming right now. In America, they don't have that. When it's some local prospect or some local guy, nobody wants to come out and watch them. So I like the fact that Yard versus Buglioni is being hyped. You know, it means that guys at domestic level can make some decent money. So I'm all for it. Marcus Thomas says, are you a South Londoner? Yes, I am. Big up Joe. Says, what's up, Hatman? Long time supporter from the States. Thank you for your support, bro. Del Boys Boxing News says, what do you make of Loma versus Linares? I think Lomachenko is going to win on points. Maybe late stoppage, but I'm saying points. Okay, Pashtun says, the second thing is what gives a boxer a good chin. Again, it doesn't have to have any relation to skull, jaw shape. Maybe neck, length, girth has something to do with it, but again, these are exceptions. Adam B says, being self-employed is not for everyone. Indeed, it's not for everyone. I'm not saying that everybody should be self-employed. I'm just saying, for me personally. Big up Will, Magic Man. Johnny West says, Wilder versus Prime Hay, who would you pick? Right now, I pick Prime Hay. Sam Wally, big up. Going back to, okay, Pashtun also says, Hatman, two things in boxing which has always fascinated me is what gives a boxer punch power from a psychological perspective. It doesn't seem to correlate with physique or muscle mass. Alright, these are interesting questions from Pashtun. Let me try and answer a couple of these questions here. What gives a boxer punch power? It's a natural aptitude for, you see, different fighters deliver power in different ways. With some fighters, it's really all about the leverage that they generate. You know, if you look at somebody like a Tommy Hearns, for example, even a David Haye, it's about their leverage. I remember Monty Barrett, who's a former opponent of David Haye, saying that David Haye wasn't really heavy-handed. He said that he was a very good puncher, but he wasn't heavy-handed. It's not like every punch he hit you with shook you to your boots. But when he did decide to throw with full power, it was very, very powerful, and there was a lot of pop in his punches. Whereas he said he fought another guy called Eric Kirkland, and he said Eric Kirkland was the most heavy-handed guy he ever fought. He was quite a small heavyweight, but he was very heavy-handed. He said every punch hurt me. Whether he hit me on the shoulder, in my arm, in the body, every punch hurt me. And guys like that, guys that were heavy-handed, it tends to be more to do with their bone density. You know, some guys have got very dense bones and just a very strong physical structure, kind of like Golovkin. So it's not, with him, it's not just about leverage. It's just about the fact the guy's got strong bones and he's just heavy-handed. You know, his physical structure makes him conducive to delivering heavy-handed punches. Whereas with other guys, they really set themselves. You can really see them set themselves and whipping the shots in with maximum velocity. That's a guy like David Haye. With David Haye, it's more about the technique, the velocity that he gets on the punch, the stance, you know. There are so many different factors that go into making somebody a hard puncher. So many different factors, but Costamado said you have to have a natural aptitude for it. And an aptitude means a natural tendency. Yeah, you have to have a natural tendency for punching hard. So I do think you can improve somebody's punching power. In fact, I know you can. You can improve it significantly. You're obviously not going to turn a Paulie Malignaggi into a Julian Jackson, but you can significantly improve somebody's punching power. But the majority of it is, I would say, you're born with it. You have a natural aptitude for it, and then it takes a trainer to come in and help you to harness that power and use it effectively in the ring. That's what I would say. And sometimes you get guys who are big and muscly and they can't punch, and you get other guys who are lanky and long and they can punch. And again, it's a lot of it is to do with your ability to gain leverage and distribute your body weight on the end of your fist. So it's down to technique a lot of the time, punching power. Yeah, a lot of the time it's down to technique. I would say most of the time punching power is down to technique. And some people just naturally have a certain technique which they refine. And with other guys, they're just heavy-handed. You know, as the examples I've already come out with, guys like Golovkin and Eric Kirkland. And one thing, there's certain training techniques I can tell you that will improve your punching power. There is a piece of gym equipment which very few people seem to use, and I'm telling you now, this works tremendously for improving punching power. There's a piece of equipment which I'm not sure exactly what they call them, but it's basically a wall-mounted bag, yeah, or a wall-mounted target that you hit, okay, and it's kind of vaguely shaped like the upper torso of a human being, and they mount it on the wall, and it's like this padded thing. And I'm telling you, if you stand in front of that and don't move your legs much, just rotate your hips and hit that thing for a few sessions, maybe half an hour, at a time, your punching power will improve. Yeah, I'm telling you now, I've done it myself. I've shown it to other people, and they were like, "Wow, shit, that's incredible. My punching power's improved so much just by hitting that thing on the wall." Yeah, this it's like I don't know how you would describe those things, man. It's like a padded target which, yeah, is stuffed full of whatever foam, and it sits on the wall and you hit it. Mike Tyson used to use those a lot, and he used to use very heavy bags as well. Tyson, he started off on, like, I don't know, 100-pound bags, and then he gradually increased the weight until by the end of Tyson's career he was using bags that were like 180 pounds, 200 pounds, you know. And it's training yourself to try and stay still and move the bag by hitting it, you know, without moving your legs too much. Because when you're in the ring, if you're moving your legs to try and wind up and get power into a punch, you're going to give away what you're doing. So, for Fox, Aikman said, how do you go about being self-employed? It's pretty straightforward. You just register with the HMRC as self-employed, whether you're going to be a limited company or you're going to be a sole trader. It depends what your profession is. If you're registered as a limited company, you have to register with not just HMRC but Companies House. And anyway, that was one question from Pashtun, and the other question was, what gives a boxer a good chin? The good chin thing really is an enigma. I think having a good chin is mental as much as anything, but there's certainly a physical component to it. And I really couldn't tell you, because I've seen guys who have got huge necks and they look like they could take a great punch, but they've got no punch resistance at all. And I did cover this in a previous podcast where I mentioned, a previous live stream where I mentioned Andre Berto as an example. Andre Berto is a guy with a big neck, you know, muscular guy, but his punch resistance is really poor. But then you've got other guys out there who are kind of slim and they don't have a big thick neck and they can take a great shot. And the example I gave last time was Gerald McClellan. Gerald McClellan had an iron jaw and he was kind of a long neck guy, you know, skinny, but he took a tremendous punch. Alright, apologies if I can't get to all the questions because there are a lot of questions here. Let me try to get to some of them. Apex Bossman, big up, big up. Lexicism, big up. Apex Bossman says, shouldn't you train your core? Again, it all depends on how you get power. Now, people can say whatever they say. You know, I'm not here trying to boast or make out as though I was something amazing as a boxer, but I can tell you one thing I could always do is punch extremely hard. And you'll have to take my word for that. I was always a tremendous puncher when I was boxing. Even now I can punch very hard when I go gym and hit the bag and whatever. I turn heads because I can punch very hard with straight punches, not just with hooks, but with the straight shots. I can punch very hard. And so all I can do is tell you some of the things that I did to improve my punching power, because I hit harder than a lot of guys who do weights all day, who do weights and all this core exercise stuff, and yet they stand next to me and they can't punch even half as hard as I punch, because I concentrate more on technique than doing strength work. There are a lot of guys who are very physically strong, but it doesn't really translate into punching power. So I would always concentrate on technique, a lot of bag work, a lot of shadow boxing, believe it or not. Yeah, shadow boxing, because that's how you get your balance and your technique right for landing the punch at the appropriate time. You know, because you don't want to land when you're at the end of the rotation. You know, you don't want to hit the target when you're at the end of the rotation. You want to hit the target mid-rotation, so you punch through the target. You understand? And it's getting your feet in the right position and just getting the technique right to where you're twisting your body and you're getting everything aligned perfectly to land on a target and getting maximum force and maximum weight into it while staying on balance. So that's what I worked on for years and years and years and years when I was boxing. It's just Technique. How to punch harder. I was always thinking in my head, always doing the shadow boxing, the bag work, hitting that pad on the wall, and yeah. A lot of power does come from the legs. It's really not upper body. People who tense up their upper body and try and punch hard, a lot of those guys struggle to punch hard. I developed power where it was effortless for me, where I would twitch my hips and bang, a right hand would come out and there's tremendous power on it. And I know from looking, and also I would study fighters. I would study, Tommy Hearns and Mike Tyson, and I would look at what they did physically, and I would try and incorporate that into what I was doing, into the way I was throwing punches, particularly the straight right hand. I looked at Tommy Hearns' straight right hand and I thought, I want to throw it like that. So I studied him religiously, looked at his stance, his body position when he threw the right hand, how much torque he was getting into the shot, and all that kind of stuff. Same Hussein says, can you show us some footage maybe on Facebook? There is actually some footage on Facebook of me hitting the bag. Big Man says, can you unblock me from, can you unblock my other channel? You probably did it by accident. I watch all your videos, been subscribing for ages. What is your other channel? It is possible that I might have blocked you by accident. Maybe in the chat actually, because some people start talking rubbish in the chat and I go to block them, but because the chat is moving so fast, sometimes you get the wrong button and end up blocking the wrong person. Nizzy Kid said, did you ever consider going pro? Yes, I did. But life finds a way sometimes to stop you doing what you want. That is what that is. Lexicism says, what do you think of Johnny Nelson as host of The Gloves Are Off compared to, say, Kellerman? I much prefer Kellerman. That's what I'll tell you. I much prefer Kellerman. Johnny Nelson, I don't know, man. Johnny Nelson's cool, but yeah, Kellerman all day for me. Bradley Jones, big up. Thank you for the support. Andrew Grimbass says, who hits harder one punch, Wilder or Foreman? I mean, I've never been hit by either of them, thankfully. So I wouldn't know. They're both around the same weight, actually. Foreman in his prime weighed around 218 to the low 220s, same as Wilder. So they weigh about the same. It's just Wilder's taller and longer, but they're about the same weight. I think Foreman is more heavy-handed. That's what I definitely will say. He's a more heavy-handed guy, but Wilder's more explosive. Alright, let me get to this comment about Kell Brook. Again, apologies if I can't get to everybody's comments. Hatman, your recent Brook videos, people in the comments have been crying about you hating on him, even though your recent videos have been nodded along to every point, just speaking the truth. Yeah, a lot of the Brook fans are very passionate and they do get upset, but it is what it is, man. I can only say it as I see it, and we'll have to find out what takes place in the ring to determine whether I'm right or wrong. Big Bobak says, what boxing gyms do you recommend in South London? These days I'm not sure, to be honest with you, because I haven't frequented gyms in South London for many years now, but back in the days there was gyms like, well, if you want to go way back in the days, there was Brixton and District ABC, but that is no longer, that don't exist no more, Brixton and District. Then there was other gyms like Fitzroy Lodge, but ever since Mick Carney, who was the long-time head of Fitzroy Lodge, died, I've heard that gym's kind of gone downhill. So I can't really vouch for Fitzroy Lodge right now, but back in the days it was one of the top gyms, and I heard they've actually lost their lottery funding, but it was a good gym, Fitzroy Lodge. That's the gym that produced David Haye. Also Miguel's, but I think Miguel's has turned into like a white collar gym / pro gym. I don't think they do amateur boxing there anymore. Maybe I'm wrong, but Miguel's has changed. What else is there now? There's Croydon ABC, but that's moved venue. I don't know what that's like now. There's Lynn, but the Lynn is no longer associated with GB boxing or England boxing, whatever they call it now, the ABA. Lynn is one of these gyms which has separated themselves from the British amateur system. They're still an amateur club, but they're not ABA anymore, or GB boxing, whatever they call it. So I'm not sure. I don't know, like amateur boxing, to be honest with you, is kind of in a bad position right now in the UK, you know, and I think it's going to show at the next Olympics, because I don't know what's going on, man, with amateur boxing, but it's there's all kind of problems. Not only just in the UK, but internationally. The AIBA have been going through all kinds of turmoil right now. So, and they're even talking about not having boxing at the next Olympics. I saw a recent news article about that, about the possibility that boxing will not be at the next Olympics, which will be a tragedy. Mike Archibald said, do you think a good chin is how you get back up and recover? I.e. Ali showed a great chin against Frazier, and Khan goes down and he's gone. Well, I mean, there's levels to having a good chin, innit? Some guys just don't go down, and then there's other guys who do go down but they get back up. Some guys don't go down easily, but they struggle to recover. Frank Bruno, for example, was a guy who could take a lot of punishment without going down. I mean, you look at the Mike Tyson first fight, he took a tremendous beating in the 5th round from Tyson without going down. But when Frank Bruno was hurt, he would just freeze. He would go into this zombie mode where he wouldn't necessarily go down, but he wouldn't really be fighting back either. He'd just be a sitting duck. And the same thing happened when he fought Lennox Lewis. He was just standing still, taking punch after punch after punch, not going down, but not recovering. BJB says Brown knocks White out. Agreed. I suspect Dylan White is going to win on points, but hey, Lucas Brown's got the power. But if I had to place a bet, I would say Dylan White on points. J.I., what's good? Big Man says, can you add me on PS4, bro? Bad man. Okay. Well, add me, man. If my gamer tag is stinkmina _x_. Michael Henderson said, I just heard what happened to Kellerman's brother. That was messed up. Yeah. Kellerman's brother got murdered by some scumbag ex-boxer. Alright, again, sorry if I'm not able to get to everybody's comments, because there's a lot of comments. Alright, Gabs QWERTY says Fitzroy Lodge is decent. You can always get sparring. Croydon ABC. Oh man, I've lost this comment now. There's so many comments coming in. Croydon ABC is very small now, but I think there's decent trainers. Used to go there, but injured now. Croydon ABC, I think that's where Isaac Chamberlain came out of, isn't it? Croydon ABC. It used to be in a church hall, Croydon ABC. Used to be in a church hall, but yeah, I did hear they've moved to a different venue now. Yeah, Kellerman used to make rap tunes. Alright, my PSN ID is stinkmina, so STINKMEANER _X_. Tapiwa, big up. BJB says, is Huey Fury finished? I mean, he froze against Parker, he just ran, he has no power, so no one wants to watch him. I don't think he froze, against Parker. I think he fought to the best of his ability, but He's just a very defensive guy. He don't really have much punching power, so he did what he could do. You know, I don't really think he froze. I thought he boxed as well as he could have boxed, given his level of ability. Um, Wesley said, "Do you know any boxers personally, Hatman?" Yes, I do. Yeah, and I've been in and around boxing for the majority of my life, and yeah, I know a lot of boxers actually, quite a few. I mean, some of them more well than others. Some of them just to say hi and what's good. Others I know like properly. Gabs Quirty says Isaac Chamberlain came out of Miguel's. Oh, okay, okay, okay. I'm sure he must have boxed that Croydon as well, though. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, I do remember Chamberlain being associated with Miguel's. I actually saw the pre-fight Chamberlain Akoli videos that they put up, and yeah, he was in Miguel's. I remember. Yeah. I used to like Miguel's because Miguel's was open like 7 days a week back in the days. When I used to go Miguel's, it was open I think 7 days a week. So you could go there, you know, every day if you wanted to. Even on Sundays it was open. Connor Boyd says, Hatman, do you think Fury will return this year? I really don't know because I think he's got some legal situations to sort out behind the scenes. So I've got no idea whether he'll be able to sort them out this year or not. Tapiwa says, do you rate Spencer Fearon as a pundit? Yes, I do. I know Spencer Fearon is a very divisive figure, but I actually do rate him as a pundit. I think he's got a lot of knowledge. Adam B says, Miguel still do amateur, Hatman. Okay, alright. Um, they still do amateur. See, I ain't been to these gyms for many years, so I don't really know what's going on. I'm just going off second-hand information from what I hear. Um, and I know that there's a lot of professionals in Miguel's. Obviously, there's Dylan White and Ian Lewison and a bunch of other people that are still training in Miguel's, and they do white collar as well in Miguel's. And generally, most of the amateur gyms that do most of the gyms that do white collar, they don't tend to do amateur as well. From what I remember, they tend to either do white collar and professional or amateur. You know. And Cass says Linares Lomachenko all day. Lomachenko all day. All day. Alright. And anyone who's played this game, by the way, Bloodborne. Jesus, man, this game is difficult. I know they said it was difficult, but I didn't realize exactly how difficult it was. This game's been doing my head in. Bloodborne. It's been actually doing my head in. Alright, let me get back to these. Alright, Liam says, Hatman, any advice for me in the amateurs? I just started at a gym. I would say work on your defense. Even when you're at home, think about defense, moving your body in certain ways to put obstructions in the way of your head to prevent your opponent hitting you. Work on defense, defense, defense. That is the best foundation to start on with boxing, is your defense. Don't worry about being macho and going into sparring sessions where it looks like the other guy gets the better of you. Don't worry about all that. You're concentrating on working on your defense and making sure that you know how to not get hit. Once you know how to not get hit, you can start building your offense on top of that. So that's the best advice I would give to you, is concentrate and be obsessed with defense. And defense don't just mean putting your hands up. No, defense means your positioning, your foot positioning, your distance, your judgment of distance, knowing when you're far enough away from your opponent, and when you get close, if you want to smother them, make sure you get around one side of them or get very close to them so they can't hit you. There are many different defensive tactics, but just work on not getting hit and build your offense on top of that. James Davis said, what do you think of Crawford's injury? I haven't really investigated it, to be honest. Andy Man says, would you start a boxing phone-up show with Boxing Gossip Lab, Boxing Voice? To be able to do anything like that, I need to sort my internet out. So one step at a time. My internet needs to be sorted out because I'm struggling to even do a 720p stream. This stream is in 360p because my internet is just messing around on me. Gorguga says Hatman is way early, but what's your prediction at this point of the Khan versus Brook showdown? Kell Brook all day. At this point, right now, Kell Brook. Alright, I'm going to bring this live stream to a close here, people, but thank you for joining me. Sorry I couldn't get to everybody's questions, but there is a lot of questions, so yeah. Thank you guys for joining me. I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out.